Good morning, YouTube. It's your boy Ace, sweeping up another video for you guys. I am here back in the sunny city of Philadelphia, where it's not always sunny. So let's get right to business. We have 18 more days. On April 2nd, global reciprocal tariffs will be implemented on top of the 25% tariffs we already have on Canada, 10% tariffs we already have on China, and 25% tariffs that we have on Mexico right now. So the idea of the reciprocal tariffs sort of just means that hopefully, I'm just talking from Trump's point of view here, hopefully that brings a lot of these countries back to the negotiating table so that from there they can actually create better deals for U.S. interests and hopefully a mutual deal that can help both countries that are involved. Now, of course, there's another side to the argument where a lot of people are arguing the idea of implementing tariffs is negative for the economy. As we can all see for the last few weeks, the stock market, crypto market, everything's been pretty much tanking. And a lot of people are blaming tariffs on this, including myself. I do think that the tariffs are for sure negatively impacting the economy right now, but I do also think that it's short-term pain for hopefully long-term success. Now, a lot of people you'll see on social media are saying hey, this is making Trump look bad. It's way too early in his presidency to be doing things like this that are obviously negatively affecting the stock market. He's been president for literally 2 or 3 weeks and everyone's blaming him for the state of the economy, the stocks and everything, which again, that's because of the tariffs. Now, the first time Trump was president, he actually did this before. And I know a lot of you are probably wondering, well, what exactly happened last time that, Trump tried to pass tariffs and created a quote unquote trade war or tariff war per se. So from what I can see here, it seems like from 2017 to 2021, Trump's administration had several positive outcomes that came out of the tariffs from that time. So one huge thing was support for domestic industries. The tariffs were sort of aimed to protect U.S. industries, such as steel, aluminum. Foreign competition is always eroding those industries. So he was kind of putting in protections for U.S.-based companies that are in aluminum industries, steel industries, and stuff like that. And a lot of these countries, Mexico and Canada especially, they ended up renegotiating a lot of the trade agreements that they had with the U.S. So they ended up creating something called USMCA, which is literally just the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, which pretty much strengthened intellectual property protections, which did benefit the U.S. And on top of that, it included a trade agreement with China that committed strength within their intellectual property, because of course China is very much known for stealing the United States intellectual property. So that was a huge concern at the time. It did end up affecting the stock market negatively in the beginning, but as a lot of these countries renegotiated a lot of the terms that they had with the United States, it caused the stock market to go up tremendously. And if anyone can remember the 2020-21 bull market, a lot of people would attribute that to Trump's first term. But if you are a Trump hater, I would say, or if you're someone who has Trump derangement syndrome, you would probably be like, no, there's no way Trump positively affected the stock market. Everything that Trump inherited was from Barack Obama. And since Obama was president for 8 years, from 2008 to 2016, and then Trump was president for 4 years, after Trump's 4 years, Biden was president from 2020 to 2024. That's 12 years of Democratic leadership and 4 years of Republican leadership. But most people you'll ask will say those 4 years that Trump was in office for was destructive, horrible, and everything that has gone wrong within the last 20 years is because of Trump. Even the crash of 2008 somehow. So, these are different arguments you're going to hear. You're also going to hear from the other side that Trump can do no wrong. Everything he's doing is great. The tariffs are going to do great for the economy. Yes, there's short-term, pain, but that doesn't matter when you're looking at things from a bird's eye view. So you're going to have a lot of different arguments, on both sides when it comes to these topics. And hey, I have my personal opinions, but that's not really what we're here for. What we're here is to see what are the facts, what is common consensus, and what is the conclusion that we can come to in order to make better decisions while we're in the market. Aside from all that, though, like, aside from all that's up with the debate on the market and tariffs and all that nonsense, the IMF was trying to crack down on El Salvador. You see, the IMF is, AKA the International Monetary Fund, pretty much is controlled by the US government. Now, the IMF, I would akin that to ECOWAS, which is AKA the Economic Community of West African States. You see, this is basically controlled by the French, right? Just the way the IMF is controlled by the United States government. The way the IMF threatened to stop funding aid to El Salvador if they didn't discontinue their, accumulation of Bitcoin. This is pretty much a soft power tactic used by the West in order to manipulate a lot of third world countries like El Salvador into being economically enslaved by only using the US dollar for international trade or buying US bonds, even though they can literally print money, or quantitative ease, if you want to use the legal term. They're just printing money. And, if you have a salary, I definitely mentioned this in the previous video, but if you make a salary of $150,000 a year and you finally, you're flexing, you made it, you telling the boys, you go back to the block, you're like, bro, I'm making $150K a year now, I'm up. But if eggs goes up, the property value goes up, everything's going up. Is it really going up, or is the money you're saving in being inflated, which is the reason why everything is rising in price and everything's becoming more expensive? Nothing really changed price. Oil, gas, houses, the value of it didn't really change. What did change was the value of the asset you're saving your money in, which is the US dollar. The US dollar is supposed to be an asset, but it's becoming such a liability because of the fact that they can inflate your money. So that same $150K that you think you're making is really probably only worth $75,000. But because of the fact that you're making $150K on paper, you don't see it that way. But if everything is up 50%, then 50% of your money is void because you're losing value on it. And it's really just that simple. It's not that complicated. And, I could show you guys a few different videos. Honestly, we could go through a whole rabbit hole about this, but I'm just going to play the short clip from the IMF.
They always tell me that the problem is high taxes, but they're wrong. Of course, high taxes are extremely high here in the United States. I give you that. But that's not the real problem. The real problem is not the high taxes themselves, but the fact that they are not even really funding the government. Government is financed by treasury bonds, paper. And who buys the treasury bonds? Mostly the Fed. And how does the Fed buy them? By printing money. But what backing does the Fed have for that money being printed? The treasury bonds themselves. So basically, you finance the government by printing money out of thin air. Someone could ask, well, so if the government can print unlimited amounts of money out of thin air, why do they collect taxes? I mean, in theory, it would make sense, right? If they can print unlimited amounts of money, why would they need taxes for? The answer is simple, but it's very shocking. The real problem is that you pay high taxes only to uphold the illusion that you are funding the government, which you are not. It's shocking, but it's true. The government is funded by money printing, paper backed with paper, a bubble that will inevitably burst. The situation is even worse than it seems, because if most Americans and the rest of the world were to become aware of this farce, confidence in your currency would be lost, the dollar would fall, and the Western civilization with it.
Salvador wins this fight, other nations will follow.
Thousands hit the streets in Niger, Burkina Faso and Mali to back their junta regime's withdrawal from the West African bloc. The three countries together have now teamed up to form a separate bloc called the Alliance of Sahel States, or the AES. The trio have also released a common passport. Their junta leaders have announced the creation of a 5,000-member unified army to fight jihadism that has plagued the region for years. Now, they see France, which has a high influence on the region, as a common enemy and favor partnerships with countries like Russia, Turkey, and Iran. The military junta states had sought an immediate withdrawal from ECOWAS in January of last year, alleging its excessive dependence on France and the West.
So as you can see, ECOWAS is basically being destroyed right now with the rise of the Sahel states like Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. These three countries have completely kicked out the French military from their land. They have taken back control over all of their natural resources. They have taken back control of their land and the movement of the uranium, coltan, gold that is being traded from in and out their country, which is really insane because uranium is super rich in Niger, and the French have leached uranium out of Niger for years. So the fact that they can't get their dirt cheap uranium and resell it on the market back in Europe, the French are pissed. And, for good reason. If you're looking at it from the French point of view, they have control over these people that they consider to be lesser than. Obviously, historically, we know the history between French imperialism and West Africa. And from a French perspective, they're looking at it as, hey, these Negroes are growing balls. We need to cut them off. Let's send in the military. Let's send in X country or Y country, or let's send in some sort of proxy organization that's going to go in there and kill Ibrahim and all of the rest of the leaders of those three Sahel states in order to take back control for France. Because let's be clear, if France loses Niger, if France loses ECOWAS and most of those countries in West Africa, France will go broke. They have zero natural resources. France does not really produce anything. So you're looking at a situation that's going to put the average French citizen in horrible trouble, which is ironic because all of those immigrants immigrating to France should probably just stay in their countries within West Africa, based off of the long-term projections of where France is going, as opposed to a lot of the West African Sahel states and the trajectory that they're going in. Those countries have a lot of potential, and if they do continue being backed with a lot of support from Russia and from China, you're going to see a situation where a lot of those countries are going to prosper. France might fall to the wayside, and you're going to look at a situation where, that could dive France into some sort of perpetual war with a lot of Northwest Africa. So we don't know that for sure, but that's a pretty safe assumption. If you're looking at things from a French point of view, they're probably going to end up having to go to war with one of those states if they seriously want to get back control over those countries.
All right, so I'm going to predict the future here. I'm willing to bet that within the next 6 to 12 months, there is going to be some kind of military intervention in Burkina Faso. Now, that's probably a country not a lot of you know about, but their new leader, this guy, whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce because I'm going to piss so many people off if I do. Yeah, he just decided that all the processing for all the gold that's mined in his country, it's now going to be processed in Burkina Faso. What they were doing before was sending it to European countries and paying them a fee to process it. And the number one nation that was benefiting from this was France, because France was doing all their processing. If you're wondering where all of France's gold comes from, it's from his country. And not only has he decided that all of the gold processing is going to be done in Burkina Faso, but he also canceled multiple secret agreements with France. See, France was allowed to automatically confiscate the financial reserves of Burkina Faso. Yeah, he canceled that. France had the right of preference over any export from there, meaning they got first dibs on anything Burkina Faso wanted to export, and it only went to other countries if France decided they didn't want it. Yeah, he canceled that. France had exclusive rights to train their military. He canceled that. France also had the right to send military troops to Burkina Faso if they determined that France's interests needed to be protected there. He canceled that. Also, Burkina Faso has been sending an annual report to France, where France has been supervising their economy, how they're running everything. Yeah, he canceled that report.
As you can see, France is being canceled in real time. And, oh, sorry about all the Eagles gear. Oh, wait, not so sorry about all the Eagles gear. We won the Super Bowl, so you know we're going to represent. Come on, guys. I'm not apologizing for all the Eagles stuff in this house. What do you guys think this is, man? This is Philadelphia. Anyways, let's get back to business. Countries like Guinea, Chad, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, and many others are joining the coalition known as AES. And for some reason, that stands for the Alliance of Sahel States, which does not build an acronym of AES in English. But I got the scoop. If you look it up in French, it does stand for Alliance des États du Sahel, which is AES if you do say it in French. So that's where you get AES from. And historically, European countries in the East, so Eastern European countries like Poland and Russia, have helped the global African liberation movement. In like 1802, when Napoleon sent a large contingent of Polish soldiers to Saint Dominique, aka modern day Haiti, the Polish soldiers had their own history of fighting freedom of foreign occupation from thousands and thousands of years of being taken advantage of by surrounding nations around Poland. So when the Polish were going out to Haiti, they were like, hey, we kind of relate to these guys. Like, F the French, we're going to join you guys. And, you know, a lot of the Polish soldiers deserted their ranks, joining the Haitian army and fighting alongside enslaved people for their freedom. In modern times, the Wagner Group, 2025. So today, the Wagner Group is known to have been an affiliated organization with the Russian government. Russia uses the Wagner Group as a proxy organization or a contractor per se to use in order to push Russian interests without Russia having to take direct liability, which America, of course, also does the same kind of deal. We do the same thing here, but we do use our valuable assets in order to push U.S. interests, assets like private companies in order to do so. And, this is just a classic playbook, or it's a very modern day strategy of imperialism, which, in my opinion, is genius to use right now in the 21st century. I would hope that a lot of those Sahel states are taking the same playbook that Russia and America uses in regards to proxy and start using their own proxies of their own in order to avoid liability on their own states. Very, very smart. Hopefully the Sahel states will be able to use Bitcoin as well in order to take advantage of the strongest digital network in human history and on the planet right now. And by building up their reserves, their own strategic reserves of uranium, gold, cobalt, different resources that come from the African continent, or specifically the Sahel states like uranium, they could actually trade not their reserves. They should build their own reserves of these vital minerals and resources, especially gold. But after they build up and develop their own strategic reserves of these minerals or resources, that's when they should start trading a lot of their resources for Bitcoin. And the reason why is because, of course, this is the hardest asset that we've ever had in human history. You may ask, how would Bitcoin even strengthen their economies long term? And we could use countries like Bhutan, China, America, and El Salvador as great examples, because all of these countries have huge reserves of Bitcoin. Now, how would it affect it positively is the next thing.
If we hold that 200,000 Bitcoin for the next 20 years, even though you see a flat line on the screen, the flat line is worth $3 trillion. So that's the value of doing nothing. Sometimes people think that you have to do something to make money. Sometimes the absence of doing awful and stupid things is making money. Doing stuff is highly overrated if the stuff is trading or selling your Bitcoin. The Lummis bill would acquire a million Bitcoin or 1.2 million Bitcoin. If you look at the consequences of that over the time frame, it's worth $16 trillion to the nation. In this case, there's a bit of reflexivity. If the United States starts to more aggressively stockpile Bitcoin, it's going to accelerate the growth of the network. It's going to accelerate capital flowing in the network. It's going to increase and expand the overall digital capital network. If we move to a triple max strategy, you'll end up with 4 million Bitcoin. That's worth $73 trillion to America. And of course, President Trump has laid out a guideline. We should be the superpower. If you want a superpower strategy, here's a superpower strategy. Acquire Bitcoin consistently. By the way, over what time frame? Consistently daily between now and the 0.99. 0.99 is January of the year 2035, the point at which 99% of the Bitcoin supply has been mined. The asset becomes effectively capped for all practical purposes because the last 1% comes out over 100 years. 0.99 between now and then you've got 10 years for the digital gold rush. You should get your Bitcoin before there's no more Bitcoin for you. And you can see here, in this strategy, we acquire it consistently, and then we use surpluses from the U.S. government to continue to save in Bitcoin. It's worth $106 trillion to the United States. And so what does that look like? Well, the Lummis plan, which is grand, is modest in some ways, and a modest strategic Bitcoin reserve plan neutralizes the national debt. Sometimes doing modest things are actually brilliant as long as you do the thing. It's like the people that bought just a little bit of Bitcoin in 2012. It was a modest investment. It made them billionaires. A modest thing 20 years in advance is a brilliant thing. If you're more aggressive, the triple max plan negates the national debt. The superpower plan creates a global superpower.
My friend.
So as you can see, this is huge. I mean, like, if the U.S. actually aggressively starts accumulating Bitcoin, then they can pay off, not just pay off all $36.22 trillion, but they can make another whopping $40 trillion off of a very humble investment of accumulating 5.5 million Bitcoins. Now, obviously, that's not very humble, but let's be real here. If they do accumulate that aggressively, that would not just push America into a state of prosperity for like hundreds of years, but we would pay off the national debt. And if we can figure out a way, I don't know if that's through Doge, I don't know if the Democrats are going to figure something out, the Republicans, I don't care. I'm pro-America. I want America to succeed. So at the end of the day, I don't care who does it, rather that's, again, Doge or the Democrats. If they're able to figure out a way to cut spending, make the government more efficient, cut down all the red tape, the bureaucracy, and all the crap. I used to be in the U.S. Navy. I know how long it takes to get simple tasks done within the government. And you know what? It's ridiculous. If they're able to come to a net zero or profit with in regards to government spending, we might be able to put America into a state where we finally have a balanced budget or a surplus budget. You know, if we could have a positive or a budget that's in profit, that's huge. And if America is in $36.22 trillion worth of debt, then imagine countries like Congo, like Sudan, like all of the Sahel states, which virtually, if we're being real, don't owe anybody shit. The whole world owes them everything. If they took back all of their resources and took back control of the Congo, the same way that Burkina Faso, Niger, and Guinea and Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Guinea, all them Sahel states, if they were to do that, they don't have any debt. They're starting fresh. You look at a country like Niger or Burkina Faso, they have nothing to worry about. They don't owe anybody crap. If they're able to create a Bitcoin strategic reserve and start accumulating, the same thing that would happen to the United States that I just explained would happen to all of those African countries or any third world, quote unquote, third world country around the world, like El Salvador, like Guatemala, Honduras, Cambodia. The list goes on. I mean, Vietnam, you're looking at all these different places that have extreme amounts of potential, but they don't have any real asset that they can save their money in for the average teenager or average young person in these third world countries to really create, economic stability with. So
Continent of Africa is circa where the US was 150 years ago. It's where Central and Southeast Asia was about 25, some might even say 30, 40 years ago. I'm a numbers guy, so you'll excuse me. All you've got to do is just look at the numbers and understand the metadata. We're now 1.3 billion people, 54 countries. It was now 55 with the splitting of the Sudan. Of those, there are 4,000 different languages and indigenous dialects. There are over 1,000 different tribes. Those are the high level numbers. If you dig even deeper, look at just the median age. The median age of an average African is 19. The median age of an average Nigerian is 17. So I want you to think about it this way. Nigeria has 200 million plus people. Half of those people are so young that they're not yet economically active. Here's what that means. So if I want to understand what the investment case is for investing in Nigeria, I look at the fact that you've got 200 million people. Half of them are unemployed because they can't yet work. And when they can start to work, they're all going to need the things we all buy. They're going to need cars, they're going to need homes, they're going to need bank accounts, they're going to need medical insurance. All of these are things that they're going to need. They're going to have children, get married. All of these are the investment cases for the continent.
All right, now let me put y'all on game. Let me break this down in the easiest way for all y'all, just so you guys have a really simple idea on how this thing works. This is a beer, right? This bottle of alcohol can be used to manipulate you. You become addicted to the alcohol. You drink it every day. You always want it. Some people cannot survive or be functional without this bottle of alcohol. This bottle of alcohol represents dependence. That is the best comparison I can give you towards the US dollar. Now, you have this Glock 19. Not loaded, my registered firearm here in the state of Pennsylvania. It is my right to own a gun or a weapon here in the United States. Great country, right? Bitcoin is no different from this Glock 48. Semi-automatic pistol, chambered 9mm Luger. Functionally, this pistol is used as a deterrent to government overreach like censorship. This pistol, or specifically the right to bear arms as an American, protects me from government tyranny. Me and every other American are protected from the centralization of weapons and defensive technologies from being in full government control. This is the reason why we have a Second Amendment in the first place, and it's in order to limit government control. Bitcoin is just like this Glock 48. You understand? This Glock 48 is the ultimate deterrent. Bitcoin acts as a deterrent to government overreach and CBDCs by providing an uncensorable, finite and decentralized monetary alternative that removes control from centralized elites like government, central banks, and institutions, BlackRock, State Street, World Economic Forum, etc., etc., etc. Bitcoin, on the other hand, has a fixed supply, 21 million Bitcoins that will ever exist in human history. So the supply is capped. It's not like the US dollar, like I was explaining earlier. I can just put on the money printer and then boom, we got 2 of them. If I want to put on the money printer again, boom, I can have 3 of them. Now I got 3 beers. Just like I could turn on the money printer and go from $3 trillion. And, well, I can't because I'd go to jail. Sorry, let me correct myself. The US government can turn on a money printer and turn $1 trillion into $2 trillion with the click of a button and a money printer machine. So basically, we're all enslaved to the US dollar because they're able to manipulate the value and we are not. You will go to jail trying to F around and print money or create, your own type of legal tender. You're screwed. Bitcoin's scarcity kind of ensures that you cannot print or create more Bitcoin that's already in circulation. It's impossible. And Satoshi Nakamoto, the entity or person that created Bitcoin, they created it and designed it in this way using the technology of cryptography in order to secure the Bitcoin network. The way you secure the network in itself is the way you mine the Bitcoin. The way you mine Bitcoin in itself is the same way or process that you need to use to send or receive Bitcoin. This creates a full circle or a lock pretty much on the way Bitcoin works so that it's impenetrable. Decentralization weakens institutional power. Weaponizing retail investors against the deep state elite is what Bitcoin is pretty much doing right now. Bitcoin levels the playing field by enabling individuals to exit traditional financial systems and join the free market, the real free market, the crypto market. You see, personal finance independence or owning Bitcoin shields individuals from monetary debasement and coercion of financial policies. Now, some of you probably heard that and were like, what the hell you just say, bro? And I'm gonna just say it real simple. They can't print $500 out of thin air and pay you with that fake fake ass money. You know what I mean? Like, they can't do that to you when you're using this. And it's really just that simple. I actually have another video of Michael Saylor going crazy, talking about how, as usual, he's always going crazy, basically talking about how third world countries can seriously use Bitcoin in a way that will develop these countries, but in short, create digital economic resistance against a lot of larger countries like China, Russia, and America, manipulating a lot of these third world countries and, doing what they want with them. Traditional third world countries like Venezuela, El Salvador, Sudan, Guatemala, Congo, Burkina Faso, Zimbabwe, Cambodia, Mali, Niger, all have the opportunity to use Bitcoin as a weapon against Eastern control, China and Russia, and against Western control, Europe and America. These countries traditionally are known as third world countries, but they can quickly become independent from Eastern and Western control while simultaneously strengthening and developing their own economies, which would make all of their countries fully autonomous from, Western and Eastern control, like I said earlier. Check out this vid, man. Let me know what you think.
Lastly, why should a teenager in a third world country love Bitcoin?
Because it gives them a conduit to the first world and the global economy and lets them participate in that economy. Because everything else they could invest in or depend upon is riskier.
So as you can see, yes, it would obviously create a leveled playing field for that average teenager in Mali. Boom, just turned 18. New government, new people, new everything, new brand. Mali is at a point where now they even have their own passports between the Sahel states, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. They're doing big things. And by creating their own passport, they're stamping and solidifying that, hey, we have a new state here and we're not going anywhere. And that average little 18-year-old in Mali or Niger or Burkina Faso, hopefully, God willing, they find the information in this video, rather it's from this video or not, they can use this information to really level the playing field and to create more economic prosperity for the younger generations coming up in Africa. Africa is about 75 to 80% underage. Like most of their population in every African country, the entire continent, 80% of it, the people there are under 18 years old. So it's super unprecedented. When you look at a great example of this, which is El Salvador, and the extreme turnaround their country faced in about 5-year period, 10-year, 5-year period of time. I'm not sure exactly how long it took Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador, but I know for a fact that 5-10 years ago, you go to El Salvador, people will look at you like you're crazy. It had one of the highest crime rates in the world, and it was actively, involved in a lot of horrible situations, rather that's the different gangs or the different issues that they had, especially the location of El Salvador in the first place. There was a lot of issues surrounding it. But as time went on, they started cracking down on crime, making Bitcoin a form of legal tender. El Salvador also became a very beautiful, hub for free trade. I think Tether is located in El Salvador, if I'm not mistaken. Nayib Bukele did a great job turning that country around and really rebranding El Salvador. And as you can see today, with the IMF trying to crack down on El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, now he has leverage. He's saving in Bitcoin. And now he's like, no, F the IMF. I'm going to give aid to my own people. I don't need the IMF for any aid or any of your crap. And ECOWAS is in the same situation where a lot of these West African countries are like, hey, we're like way richer than like most of these countries in Europe in regards to our resources. So if we take back our resources, why do we need any help from the IMF? Why do we need any help from ECOWAS? Let's push them aside and focus on our own countries, build our own wealth, create our own reserves, build their own mineral resources up. And hey, they're using Bitcoin as the power horse in order to ride their way to freedom and real prosperity. The American dream is something that can be shared with the whole world if the whole world, each individual country, has the ability to be autonomous and to save in an asset that isn't manipulated by large countries such as China, Russia, and America. So when you look at Nayib Bukele, who is of Palestinian ancestry, which is so funny. I actually learned that today. I thought he was just a regular Hispanic guy, El Salvadorian, but apparently the most Arabs outside of the Arab world, or Middle Easterners outside of the Middle East, is actually in Latin America, which is a pretty funny fact. Same thing with the most African or Black people outside of Africa is located in Brazil or the Latin American world. So very, very funny situation, because Nayib Bukele is of Palestinian ancestry. I'm sure he would hope for some kind of prosperity to be shared with his people in Palestine and to copy the model of El Salvador if Palestine was to, hopefully one day have its own state or have its own sense of autonomy. I'm a firm believer that every Jew or Israeli deserves to have a place to be free, to be safe, and they deserve their own country, their own laws, and their own autonomy. And I believe the same thing for the Palestinians. I think they should have their own state. They have they're humans. They have the right to have their own prosperity, their own governance, and to, take control of their own land, per se. I believe every human, whether you're Chinese, European, or African, every human or ethnic group has, the right of self-autonomy. They should be able to have their own independence. And
It's down. The IMF dangled a $1.4 billion loan in front of El Salvador. Sounds nice, right? Wrong. They saw what happened. El Salvador stacked $632 million in Bitcoin with $362 million in unrealized gains. That's a nation proving Bitcoin works. And now the IMF is panicking. That's right. It's scared. Now look, if you don't know how the IMF scam works, let me introduce you to John Perkins.
I think it's fair to say that since the end of World War II, and increasingly in the most recent decades, we have managed to create the world's first truly global empire. And it's the first empire that's been created primarily without the military. It's been created by economic hitmen, by people like what I once was. And we work many different ways, economic hitmen, but perhaps the most common is that we will identify a third world country that has resources our corporations covet, like oil, and then arrange a huge loan to that country from the World Bank or one of its sisters. But the money never goes to the country. Instead, it goes to our big corporations to build infrastructure projects, power plants, highways, industrial parks, things that benefit a few very rich people in that country, as well as our own corporations, but don't help the majority of the people who are too poor to buy electricity, don't have the skills to get jobs in industrial parks, don't own cars to drive on the highways. And yet those very people, the whole country is left holding a huge debt so that it can't pay for education and social services and health care for its people. In fact, the debt is so huge by intent that at some point we economic hitmen go back and we say, listen, you owe us a lot of money. You can't repay your debts, so sell your oil real cheap to our oil companies without regard to the environment. Vote with us on the next critical United Nations vote. Send troops in support of ours to someplace in the world.
The Fed may or may not cut rates this upcoming Wednesday, March 19th, 2025. Don't miss it. I'm going to be glued to my TV to see what decision Chairman Powell makes. But on Wednesday, depending on what the Fed does, it could bolster Bitcoin's price by enhancing liquidity and increasing its appeal as an inflation hedge. Conversely, rate hikes might dampen investor enthusiasm for risk assets like Bitcoin, but let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that there's some more bullish news that comes out over the next few weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks or so. Based off of previous cycles, Bitcoin should be going parabolic. between March, April, and then May at some point you would sell and May go away. You would think there would be some type of real correction from May to like August or September latest. And then that last crazy bull run rally at the end of the year, like most bull markets within the full 4-year cycles of Bitcoin have done. But this cycle is, I don't want to say it's different, but it's definitely timing wise taking a lot longer for Bitcoin to really go on its insane run. And let's be real, Bitcoin can recorrect all the way to $50,000. If it did that, Bitcoin would technically still be in an uptrend. So I don't know exactly how to perceive what's going on right now within the Bitcoin market. I know a lot of people talk about manipulation, foreign actors, a lot of issues, with that. But when in doubt, zoom out. At the end of the day, Bitcoin is doing great. It's up 55% year over year since 2008. When you look at all the facts like that, you kind of come to realize that gold has not done better. The stock market has not performed. Dollar or the yen, none of these currencies have outperformed Bitcoin. So at the end of the day, you should have some percentage allocated to Bitcoin. If the US government is creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve, you have countries like El Salvador going from third world to first world, in my opinion. You're looking at a situation where this technology is revolutionary. And if we're able to use it as retail investors, the average Joe like me or you, if we're able to put our little $10 every paycheck or $50, $100, $500 every paycheck into Bitcoin and truly accumulate it, never spend it, dollar cost average into it, you're going to look at a much brighter US of A. And I think you're going to look at a much brighter world once Bitcoin becomes a huge share of the global $900 trillion worth of stuff that we own right now. Humanity, we have about $900 trillion worth of assets. Bitcoin isn't even like 1% of that yet. So, at the end of the day, the market cap for Bitcoin right now is around 2 trillion. For crypto, you're looking at $3 trillion. Gold is at 12 trillion. So if Bitcoin gets anywhere near gold, you're looking at $1 million Bitcoin really soon. So just keep our fingers crossed. Keeps our, don't keep your hopes up. Keep your brain open for what is coming next. Don't get your hopes up. Don't get your hopes too down. Stay positive. Keep dollar cost averaging. And at the end of the day, everything's going to work out, guys. Nothing fails when you just don't do too much. A little bit of money put to the side, a very humble investment in Bitcoin can turn into millions of dollars in the future. If you're consistent, you shut up and you just stay doing what you're doing. Stay safe, you guys. Be easy. I'll see you on the flip side. Stay dangerous, y'all. Peace.